Welcome to Night School. That we come in this classroom and we break down all the stuff going on in the world. It's a lot of teaching and learning going on. It's not TV. It's not a podcast. It's an international classroom. And tonight we got a lot of things going on. And we're going to put our legal hat on later in the show. We're going to talk about what's going on with Diddy, some updates there. And of course, we're going to talk about the death of O.J. Simpson. What does it mean politically? What does it mean culturally? What does it mean legally? Some of y'all been losing your minds over OJ, and y'all got mad at me for talking about my opinions on OJ. So we're going to talk about all of that later tonight. But first, we have something else that's very, very important, maybe the most important thing that we could be talking about right now, and that is Black Maternal Health. For those that don't know, this is the start of Black Maternal Health Week, and this is an opportunity for us to do something that we should be doing every single day of the year, and that is talking about Black women's health, Black women's reproductive justice, Black women's lives. And here to talk to me about that, to help me break it all down, is the legendary Brooklyn's finest, Monifa Bandele. She is a senior vice president of MomsRising, and she does so many other things. The list goes on and on and on. But right now, she's going to break this stuff down for us. Monifa, so good to see you.
Oh, thank you for having me on this first day of Black Maternal Health Week 2024.
2024. For those that don't know, what is Black Maternal Health Week?
Black Maternal Health Week, which was founded by the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, is a week where Black justice workers and Black maternal health advocates all over the country rise up and say enough is enough. Many people don't know that the United States has one of the worst maternal health outcomes of developed nations, and a lot of that sits on the fact that Black women and Indigenous women are suffering and dying, 3 to 4 times the rate of our white counterparts. And so with this horrible maternal health rates that we have in the United States, Black Mamas Matter Alliance has set aside this week for there to be on-the-ground events, online events. There are doula workshops. There's lobby days in states all over the country. And if you could just imagine like Black midwives, advocates, nurses, doctors kind of storming the state houses and doing community events all within the same week. That's what Black Maternal Health Week is.
Wow. That is important too. That is dope. And it's important that this work is happening. When you say that the health outcomes for Black women in the United States are among the worst in the world, and I've heard that before, what does that mean in practical terms? Like, are we dying giving birth? Are we dying early in the what does it mean? What's going on with this?
Yes, it means that particularly during birthing and labor and up to a year postpartum, Black women are dying. Postpartum hemorrhaging, hypertension, preeclampsia. I mean, one of the things that the CDC released is that actually 80% of these deaths are preventable, right? So this is a lot of hospital neglect. It's a lot of not listening to Black women. It's a lot of not responding to people postpartum. And so I'll give a concrete example right here in Brooklyn. I'm from Bed-Stuy. The closest hospital to my house is Woodhall. And in less than 2 years, 2 otherwise perfectly healthy young Black women have died there, Christine Fields and Shayasia Simple. And Christina Fields, they accidentally cut cut an artery, and she was bleeding out and was not attended to. And Shayasia last year, not being listened to, had a tube wrongfully intubated in her. And we see things like this all over the country. And people want to say, well, maybe Black women aren't as healthy. Maybe this is an issue of class, and it is. But what we find is that even when we control for a level of education, class, income, Black women are still dying at higher rates from preventable causes than white women. And so we want everybody to get on the platforms this week. It's BMHW24. That's the hashtag. And find out how to get active in your state. We see it's particularly bad with they're banning abortions. I know y'all were talking about that a couple of days ago. These things are connected.
So help me draw that connection, because we on the show here, we were talking about Arizona and the decision to basically go back to a law that's older than the state itself. Arizona, I think, became a state in 1912, and they're going back to a law that was like 1864, maybe.
Look, Civil War.
Civil
Okay,
War. I mean,
they taking us back to Civil War era,
that's
Civil
wild.
War era.
And basically now saying that abortion is outlawed effectively, getting rid of the 15-week rule, and saying that even in the case of rape or incest, you still got to carry the baby to term. Why? How is this happening? It seems like even Republicans are mad about this.
Yeah, and what's ironic is that these people claim to be pro-life. And what happens in states where there's abortion bans, one is those are the states with the highest maternal mortality rate. Those are the states where there's not access to affordable childcare. Those are the states that have not implemented paid leave for when babies are born. Those are the states that have not expanded Medicaid, right? So it's like you push policies that make it difficult to grow a family, to extend a family, and then in the same end, you ban abortions, which also creates a maternal health desert. Doctors are refusing to practice in states where there's abortion bans. They don't want to be criminalized. If someone shows up and they have to make a decision,
Yeah.
is her life really in jeopardy? Maybe it's not. Maybe I don't give the abortion and she dies, or, and so you have places like Georgia where OBs have left the state. So you create these maternal health deserts, which is everything that is the opposite of pro-life, right? So, it's not really ironic. It's actually hypocrisy, but we see a direct line because what you need in order to have a healthy and safe maternal health care system is access to the full realm of reproductive health, right? If you have people who are not doctors, who are not the person who's pregnant, sitting in a room, sitting in a hall, sitting in a state house, making medical decisions for women who are pregnant and for birthing people, it puts everyone in jeopardy who's in that situation. And so it's actually doing the opposite of promoting life. It's making these states more deadly for people who get pregnant.
Why is this happening now? I mean, Black women's maternal health outcomes have always been bad, comparable to the white counterparts. There's always been problems, but it seems like now I'm hearing more and more stories, more and more bad news. Is it that we're getting better at telling the stories, or are things getting worse? What's going on?
Sadly, for young women like my daughters, the birthing outcomes today are worse than they were when my mom gave birth to my brother and I in the 70s. That's
Wow.
crazy. That means we've gone back. Roe
Wow.
has rolled back. We have rolled back. This leaning into the medicalization of birthing does not work in our favor. All the
What does that
C-section.
mean? Break that down for us. What is the medicalization of birth?
It means back in the day, when women gave birth, there was typically a Black woman in this country, right? A midwife in those communities that were responsible, that had a team of folks that gave birth to the babies, both within their own communities and families. But for Black women, we were also the birth workers for even the people who had enslaved us in post-slavery, right? And so giving birth was not something that happened in a hospital. It was not something that was directed by a doctor. Doctors can be involved, but I'm just talking about the shift that has happened, right? And so you have people like Marion James Sims, who you may have heard of, this doctor, who is considered to be the father, right, of OBGYN, who actually tested and tortured Black women to develop the different practices that we see today. So we see something that was in the home, that was with people who looked like us, helping us through something that is a natural process, getting intervention when that was necessary, to an extreme measures really started to take off in the 70s and 80s, where the United States has a high number of C-sections. Everything is done in the hospital. And we know what happens in the hospital with Black people, not just giving birth, right? We saw a woman who was a former congresswoman in Texas recently. Her family is suing because of how she was treated because of medical neglect. So we're in a vulnerable position and we are giving birth. The story I love to share is like Serena Williams, right? Here's one of the most wealthy, powerful, influential women in the country, if not the world, right? And she's having to fight and argue in the hospital to get the treatment that she needs so that she doesn't lose her life, right? She had to demand that they scan her body for blood clots and they were. But imagine if you're not Serena Williams, right?
Right.
Imagine if you don't have that level
Just
of
regular, not
influence
rich, not famous, not connected, just
and
regular.
can't advocate because maybe you just had a C-section, right? So this is why this is happening, and this is why you're seeing a rise in Black midwifery all over the country. You're seeing a rise in doulas because, like with all things, we fight back, right? We want to get back to healthy birth outcomes.
So you mentioned the hospital. I was thinking about when my youngest child was born, and we were in the hospital, and we were worried about all the stuff that you worry about, from preeclampsia to, gestational diabetes to, what's going to happen when this baby is born, what's going to happen, like you said, up to a year after the baby is born. These are all questions that people have throughout the process. And we were in the hospital, and it was a good hospital, and we asked questions and they answered them, and the doctor knew that we were professionals, and so they gave us a certain kind of treatment. They answered our questions, they brought us stuff that we didn't even ask for. I can't say that I didn't have a good experience, but I also noticed the doctor was very honest with me, and she said to us, everybody doesn't get this treatment. She said they all get it from me, but other people in the hospital don't necessarily give this treatment. And she said the nurses are often people who make decisions about, they're your direct line. When you're not, the doctors are incredibly important, but nurses are incredibly important. And she was talking about how when people come in from certain neighborhoods and they don't get read as valuable, they don't get read as properly, sufficiently articulate or educated or whatever, they get all kinds of treatment. And she even talked about how, like, they'll give some people drug tests,
Oh yeah.
it's like a punishment.
The policing of our bodies, of our pregnant bodies, happens because we're policed all the time. So
Yeah,
even when we're pregnant, even when we're in the hospital, right?
that's wild. And I guess what I'm thinking about is this intersection of race and class, because like you said, it's not a class thing exclusively,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also not a class thing, right? So
It's not a class thing. And just think of the dangerous combination that is both race and class and gender, right? All of those things coming together, making it a triple dangerous situation for birthing people. So, one of the things I like to talk about is that it's systemic. Up until recently, in medical schools, doctors were taught that Black people feel less pain, right? So
right.
if you you went to medical school 20-25 years ago, which a lot of people did, right? This is something that was taught to you at that time, right? And so even if I'm well educated, but you think that maybe I don't feel as much pain as the next person, I'm going to get a different treatment. Or when I say something doesn't feel right, I may be dismissed by you or your team. So these are the types of things that we're fighting back. I mean, they just changed the kidney measurement for Black people to be able to get kidney. I mean, we still have deeply racist teachings that are happening in our medical institutions. So it's systemic. You have this thing of like your class and your race coming together, and we know how Black women are treated, especially when we try to advocate for ourselves, right? When we are actually doing the advocacy, that's criminalized and considered to be combative. People have seen that written in their chart when they're asking questions.
Oh, they love to call
Combative.
people
I want to
combative.
know what you're doing to me.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's one of the things the doctor was telling me. It was like, okay, if I ask a question or my wife asks a question, it was like, okay, well, we read this study and it said this and this and this, and therefore that. And they're giving us responses. Even if they don't agree with us, they're responding in a certain way. But if somebody doesn't present a certain way or talk a certain way, they may have the exact same concern. I don't think this works for my body, or I feel pain here, or this makes me uncomfortable here. And they get a very different outcome. I was thinking about the story before we go of this brother, Bruce McIntyre. I don't know if you know him. You probably do. But he's a health advocate. He's the founder of the Save a Rose Foundation, and he started it a few years ago when his fiance, whose name is Amber Rose Isaac, she died in April 2020. She was pregnant. She developed HELP syndrome, which for those who don't know is a syndrome of hemolysis. It's like a what's it called? Microangiopathic blood smear, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelets in people who are pregnant or right after you have the baby. It's something that is it's something that can be dealt with, but you got to be able to recognize it. She had it, and they ignored her. They didn't tell her condition and until the day she was induced for labor. She then underwent an emergency C-section. Her platelet levels were below normal range.
Platelets low, right?
Yes, and she didn't survive. And she told them that she wasn't okay. She told them before. I mean, she told them throughout the process that she wasn't feeling okay, that she's had problems. They ignored her, and these types of stories happen every single day. And it's like, I don't know what we can do, and I know we can't solve it all tonight. But before you go, just tell me this: what can we do to support Moms Rising? What can we do to support moms? Black Maternal Health Week.
Black Maternal Health Week, definitely follow the Black Mamas Matter Alliance. They are constantly putting out reports, constantly sharing local efforts that people can join all over the country. So check them out. At Moms Rising, we're pushing a piece of national legislation called the Black Maternal Health Momnibus. So it's 13 bills together that are talking about everything: better training in schools, a pipeline for Black birth workers, holding hospitals accountable who are repeat offenders in losing the lives of Black moms. Like the whole suite of things, everything you could think of is in that Momnibus. But then also there's the stuff I named earlier, right? A lot of women are getting into trouble after labor and delivery, postpartum. The United States is also the only developed country that doesn't have a universal paid parental leave program, right? So if you had a C-section and now you've got to be back at a cash register, or you're hemorrhaging, but you still have to show up to work, or you're going to lose your job. That's where we are seeing the policies that we don't have in place, right, for birthing people, causing another layer of danger for them. So we have to put all these policies together: the affordable childcare, the paid family medical leave. All of those things help us to have healthy birth outcomes. If we look at countries all over the world, I mean, we could just even close. We look at Canada. They do not have the same maternal mortality rates as the United States. Why?
Crazy.
Universal health care, paid family leave, right? Universal child care. These are the things that will keep mothers alive.
And that's what we want to do. We want to keep mothers alive. We want to keep a focus on Black mothers this week in particular. We care about all mothers, but Black women, Black mothers, Black birthing people, we got to care about, especially because no one else is. Monifa, I appreciate you as always. You got to come back on and break all this stuff down for us on a regular basis, because there's so much work, so much energy that needs to be put into Black women's health and Black women's maternal health in particular. So we appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you too. Don't be fooled by pro-life. It's not pro-life. It's the other thing.
You ain't never lied. Today was an interesting day in media culture, an interesting day in sports, an interesting day in Black racial conversations. Today, O.J. Simpson passed away at the age of 76. And O.J.'s death went just about the way I thought it would. White people act like they were going to throw second line parties and parades. Black people acted like Martin Luther King died. And I was irritated on both sides. And so I had some thoughts. I made a video. I said, look, this man was a monster, not a martyr. People called me an Uncle Tom. People called me a coon. People called me racist for saying that O.J. Simpson was rightfully found not guilty, because he was rightfully found not guilty. And so basically my timeline is in shambles. And it's in shambles from the right-wing racists and the left-wing people who think, or not even left-wing people, just Black people. They ain't all that left-wing. They just Black and think they're on the left. And they all mad at me. So I brought somebody in who could help me understand such delicate matters, because she has handled these delicate cultural and social matters with aplomb. You may know her from her televised beatdown, which I'm not sure how it was not a federal crime. Her televised beatdown of Eric Adams on The Breakfast Club recently. He's the mayor of New York, allegedly. And you may know her from her own so many great programs, from Olay and Friends to Olurin to all the other stuff on her YouTube channel. You got to check her out. Her name is Olayemi Olurin, and she is one of my dear friends and dear friend of the show. Olay, O.J. Simpson is dead. First of all, how'd you respond to that when you saw that?
I quote tweeted it and I said, damn.
That's the safe answer.
Yeah, just damn. That could go however. I was like, oh, this year's taking everybody.
No, people were so mad. So help me understand this from your perspective, right? OJ was not. There are people who do awful things, and Black people still love them for a reason, right? They made a great album. They gave away money. You know what I mean? They loved us, and you're like, okay, like Miles Davis did some awful things in his personal life, but no one ever feels like Miles Davis wasn't with us, and so I understand the tensions and the contradictions that people wrestle with.
But OJ is not somebody who was ever interested in the Black community. He always wanted to distance himself.
That's what it seems like to me. As soon as he could get out, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I agree with that. I think that's true. OJ has never been somebody who is he's not out here going out of his way to identify as a Black man, at least not before the case. But I don't think for Black people it's about how OJ feels as an individual and what OJ represents. I think Black people, we have a criminal system across this country that day in, day out makes it its business to railroad Black people, and for generations. Like, when you think about it, it's a little insulting that white people could even feel so offended or affronted at the possibility that the way they want. Meanwhile, the vast majority of what the criminal system is there to make sure that Black people catch, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think for a lot of Black people, it's watching a legal system, especially if you think about the kind of cases that were highly televised at the time, like what was happening in the 90s and what they were seeing. If you're a Black person that is seeing this legal system be weaponized against your community a million times, and then you see a case that's being made to be so high profile because this is a Black man and this is a white woman, regardless of how that Black man feels, it's the racial tensions or the reality that this is a Black man and a white woman that's making them foam at the mouth and be as racist as they're being. And then the criminal system that they have weaponized against Black people backfires on them because they violate their seen in plain sight, violating, engaging in police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, and just fumbling the case. Then as a Black person, you're gonna be excited to see them get what they give. So I understand the excitement, despite how OJ himself as an individual felt.
And that makes sense to me. I'm old. Like, I was in high school during the OJ verdict. I was, watching this play out. I remember sitting and supposed to be watching the NBA finals, and instead I was watching OJ once again try to use a white vehicle to escape a Black reality, riding down the highway in that Bronco. And I remember thinking, wow, this nigga guilty. Like, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know a lot of things, but I was like, I don't know. I have a more nuanced understanding of the law and stuff like that. But at the time, I was a teenager. I was like, yeah, any nigga that get this van in this truck and run from the police after they catch him with all that blood and all them dead white people, like, he probably guilty. That was my thought. But by the time he got found not guilty, I understood what you just described. I was like, okay, yeah, the system is not structured to support us. I think OJ did it, but I also think that they cheated.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes police do that. That is a common thing that police say and do, right? And you see, even if you watch some propaganda TV shows like Law and Order, they'll make it seem like the prosecutor the public defender, is cheating, and the other people are cheating, and the defense attorney.
They always act like constitutional rights is cheating. And I said something also. I want us to stop as a Black community when Black people win cases or when Black people are exonerated because their rights were violated. We like to say it was a technicality or a loophole. And no, it's the right decision. There's a reason for that. Those are people's rights. They're violating their rights. Like, okay, so
yes, and that is literally what I said today. I said, OJ's. I'm reading you. I said, because I've been getting dragged for like hours. Like, I can't. Something else could have happened in the world, I wouldn't know, because my timeline is just calling me all kinds of idiots. But and it's amazing to see. But basically, what I said was, let me see if I can find it. Because people are mad. People are big mad. I said OJ Simpson was an abusive liar who abandoned his community long before he killed 2 people in cold blood. His acquittal for murder was the correct and necessary result of a racist criminal legal system. But he's still a monster, not a martyr.
Yeah.
And the point I was making was what you just said. It was the correct and necessary verdict because Mark Fuhrman lied.
Yeah.
He got caught lying. So, like, I mean, from a legal perspective, like, is it wrong for me to say, he did it, but it was still the correct result?
No, it's not. It's definitely not wrong. So I guess I have complicated and nuanced feelings on this because of my being a defense attorney, right? So I guess this is what I'm going to say on the guilt and innocence thing. I've represented like 1,000 people. And what I realized from doing that is that nobody but those people has any fucking idea what happened. Like, unless I have represented a bunch of people, and I have got up in court, and I will always say, my client, we deny all of these allegations discharged. I will fight that case to tooth and nail, and I can make what case I make based on what my evidence, what I believe I have, and the prosecutor does the same thing. But we actually don't know shit. I really cannot definitively tell you at all. And it's something I actually stopped exploring at all. I really don't think it's relevant to me as a defense attorney, but when I really realized that I didn't know was the first time I ever had a client and I where we had a bumpy relationship. And I deserved that. I remember what happened. I was representing a Black woman who she had 3 cases. I was arraigning her on 3 cases, and each case was with like the family it was a family member of her baby daddy. And they were all like outlandish these accusations were like, I was like, yeah, she definitely did that. Like in my mind, like when I'm asked, I swear it was like, there's no way the family is just like, it's a conspiracy. The family's all out to get to you, blah, 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 blah. And I remember thinking that, being like sure of it and kind of button heads with her. And there really was no reason for me to like protest or you know what I mean? Like I didn't need her innocence or guilt really didn't matter as far as what I needed to do to get her out or anything like that. But I did kind of express skepticism, and I continued to feel skepticism, confident that she was lying. She wasn't lying. I remember like eventually finding out like she wasn't lying. Like the family, like none of them were any peaches on the beach. You know what I mean? But I remember that really
feeling when your attorney be like, "Oh shit, you really didn't do this."
No, dead ass, like dead ass. And that's what I realized. Like I really don't know. You really don't know. And so for me, I don't. It's not something I really I concern myself with. But I will say this. I feel differently about OJ and his cases because something that happens when cases are sensationalized, right? Or when cases have a lot of media attention or people feel passionately one way or the next is that they're focusing on a case without actually focusing on the cases. And what I mean by that is this. OJ was acquitted for that. That was his right. It was his right to take that case to trial. He won that because his rights had been violated. Everything that happened on the up and up, and he exercised the system the way it's allegedly supposed to be done. And yet, what I really have a problem with that we never seem to talk about when we're talking about OJ is the actual case he went to prison for. Because in that case, it is very clear on the record, pretty much explicitly so if you've even heard the parole hearings on that case, is that they wanted to punish him for the case where he exercised his rights and he was acquitted, and they used another opportunity to punish him for something that should be something we all talk about, and it's never a part of the dialogue.
And how should we talk about that? Because you're right. So basically, y'all, if y'all don't know, OJ Simpson was in Vegas and he said that somebody took his memorabilia. He went and got it back, and the juice was loose. And when OJ
look at him,
they threw the, I mean, they got him for everything. He basically ran and got his shit and left, but they got him for like kidnapping, theft. They basically gave him 30 years for jaywalking. It was like basically like, we're going to give you every possible conviction, every charge, and then ultimately every conviction for something that is would you say most people would probably not go to jail for?
Yeah. At the very least, a tiny fraction at that time. And then at his parole hearings, they were actively, when they were talking about their reasons for why they, like, I don't know if you've ever seen OJ's parole hearings, but it was heartbreaking personally to me. It was heartbreaking, like watching it, like, because this, at the end of the day, this is an old man. There's a reason why, let me just say this, there is a reason why the legal system has like statute of limitations and all these different things. It's because it's the idea that people change throughout the course of their time history, is that people should not have to spend their life, they're supposed to be able to rely on comfort that they're not going to get got for something that happened decades earlier or whatever when they're living a different life, right? So when you see this old man already having been disproportionately punished because they're mad, they're exercising their, basically it's retaliation for having beat the system the first time, which again is the rights. And then they're up there saying to him, responding to him, and basically and talking about the case that he was acquitted for as their reason for why they're denying him parole. And the reason why that should matter to us is like people get focused on like, okay, well, fuck OJ. OJ's bad. OJ deserved this. But that's not the point. It would think about everybody else and the average person that is in the criminal system and the day-to-day person, which is usually poor Black and brown people, right? What happens if you are penalized. If you don't, you're either plea deals are weaponized against, cash bail is weaponized against you in order to force you to take plea deals. And then, or you have the problem, or you go to trial and then you suffer the trial tax that if you lose at trial, they punish you disproportionately for having gone to trial. And then if you win at trial, that they'll punish you at a later date. They'll use some trumped up foolishness to be able to do that. So these are a litany of ways that our rights are being violated in plain sight, and nobody's talking about it because they're too focused on being upset at the individual person and a case that they've gotten too invested in.
And I think that makes sense, right? So that's why for me, it's like, I don't like OJ for lots of reasons, right?
Yeah.
Before and after Nicole Brown, Simpson, and Ronald Goldman died, let's say he didn't kill them. He died, right? But before that, OJ was trash. And after that, OJ was trash. And so I don't like him, but I still don't want to see him go to prison when it's clear that the police planted evidence, or at the very least lied about some things. He pled the fifth on the planting evidence part, but Furman certainly made it very clear it became clear rather that Furman lied about being racist and lied about using racist slurs. So if I can't trust the police and the integrity of the process, then I could never get a fair shake. So fine, I can deal with that. I can also deal with the people who say the civil trial was fair, because people remember he had a civil trial, but that's a different burden of proof. So that makes sense to me as well. Because you break them down to me how OJ can be found guilty for murder, or not guilty for murder, but guilty for the civil trial based on basically the same evidence.
Because in a criminal trial, you have to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, much higher standard. And in a civil trial, you have to be found guilty, like I think preponderance of the evidence, a much lower burden. So you could get somebody
like
civil. Yeah, exactly. Or honestly, more than that. Like the be beyond a reasonable doubt requires much more than what it takes to win a civil case.
Right. Civil, so you got to pick one.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So for me, that makes sense, right? Like, I think in a civil trial, hell yeah, they should get all OJ shit, right?
Yeah.
But then OJ, and I've never seen in a case, in a murder case, and then you spend so much time taunting the victim. OJ literally wrote a book called "If I Did It."
Yeah.
Like, it's like he was mocking people. It's like
here's my thing. White supremacists mock us like that every day. Kyle Rittenhouse been on a tour for years. Like they do that. They do that all the time, actually. You know what I mean? There are people putting Derek Chauvin gifs in my comments as we speak. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, and you know what I mean? Like, I guess here's the thing, and this is going to sound controversial to people, because people look at, the criminal system and what happens there as though it matters fundamentally, and it really doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, whether or not, because if I think about if the reason why OJ is a monster, let's break it down, right? The reason OJ is a monster is because he abuses women, right? He abuses women because he was always, we know this to be that he abused Nicole before he ever allegedly murdered her, right? Like we know for certain that there was domestic violence, and the other reason why you wouldn't like him as a Black person is that socially he wasn't a conscious Black person, right? So right. What about how if my problem is the abuse, is that women are being abused, right? Or that OJ is not a socially conscious Black person, what about how we responded to the criminal trial, or how the criminal trial was resolved deals with any of that? Because the reality is, like, the reason why he's being abusive or he abused women isn't addressed. That doesn't, we didn't have a major the Black community didn't have this major transformative moment where we decided, let's address how these things happen. Let's talk about him being abused, or let's step back, right? And there's at least like multiple levels that we'd have to get to that, because between the conversation of him abusing women is the conversation that this is a white woman, and the different dynamics and social things that come into play about that. So we're levels away from actually getting to addressing anything that deals with the root cause of the violence. And then as far as his social consciousness, We didn't require that. That wasn't even required of him because, like I said, it was never about him. It's about what he represents. You know what I mean? And all this. So to me, the verdict doesn't matter. I don't care whether or not OJ is a martyr or any of that is like immaterial to me. And I guess I don't feel like Black people are wrong, right, or one way or the next in terms of how they respond to it, because every single day America plays in our face. Like the police killed at least 1,200 people last year.
I feel you. I guess what I struggle with is like I don't want to be like white people.
I
you know what I mean? Like
but are we like white people? Like are we like white people if we don't care about that?
No, I guess what I mean is white people play in our face. America plays in our face. They, a whole bunch of people get killed by police officers. They dismiss it. I feel that. And so that often becomes like an excuse or a reason that people use to say, well, I don't got to care about OJ. They don't care about us. But I'm not sure that following their example, and by they, I mean the people who support violent policing, etc., are models that I want to follow. I'm like, I don't want us to celebrate. I don't want us to celebrate OJ. I
don't think people celebrate OJ though. I think they celebrate they celebrate the verdict. You know what I mean? I don't think they celebrate OJ. I think they celebrate what seems representative of a moment white people were upset. And I really think that just is really what it is. White people felt. I think this has less to do with our response or our emotion as a community is tied directly in response to how white people were acting. If white people were not foaming at the mouth that they did not get one of millions of Black men that they did get, you know what I mean? If white people were not carrying on like that, we wouldn't give a fuck. We would be like, oh yeah, fuck him. That would be their attitude. But it's because they go and be racist and they act the way that they act about it. That's why we have to act like that.
I definitely get a perverse pleasure watching the anger that white people have at OJ Simpson. Like, because again, they act as if they're outraged about injustice. But they're not outraged about George Zimmerman. They're not outraged about the Rodney King beating and anything in between. In the decades between those two things, they're not outraged. It's only OJ. It's like we want to get every one of y'all, and we missed one.
And ultimately, and here's the thing, right? The thing that white people wanted to do, they still get to do. The reason why they're upset, here's the thing. The reason why Black people are excited is almost like a relief. It's because the way that they will spin this, how they will use this and weaponize this against other Black men. If they're able to convict this Black man and paint him as abuser and paint him as brutes, and they're able to like, quote on, like take down this successful Black man and blah, 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 and do all of that, it really shows that no Black man is untouchable. And it shows how, how they're going to treat you. So that's really what it is. But from white people's perspective is they've still mad. It's not like they ever allowed that man the feelings of innocence, right? When white people beat the system, which is every fucking day, they get to walk around like that's the truth, and they force feed us all to believe it, right? They will be foaming at the mouth before they let you call Kyle Rittenhouse the murderer that he is. You know what I mean? They will be defending police officers for murders that you are witnessing on video. You see it all the time. You see it all the fucking time. So it's like, did they not get what they wanted? Ultimately, they continue to paint Black men as violent and brutes and never give Black men the benefit of the doubt. They continue to ignore whatever the results are of the criminal system. Even in the case of that case, they proceeded to ignore what the fuck happened and they managed to punish him. So really and truly, if Black people get a little bit of a giggle off because they're still somehow they feel like they lost something, then by all means, that's how I see it.
I feel that 1,000%. And if that's what people are, I could live with it. The vibes I get, or at least to my feed, and maybe I'm following the wrong people, is people either saying he really didn't do it, which is crazy, or people saying, they started talking about him like, oh, he was a good dude, rest up, big homie, and I'm like, this dude, you talk about playing our faces. Let me just show you one thing before we move on. I'm going to show you this clip. You probably seen it before, but for those who didn't, here's a clip that goes around social media about OJ sort of talking to a reporter who asked him about his past.
For me, and I genuinely was surprised.
Did you do it?
No, I didn't.
I think it was his idea of a joke.
Nope.
And this is it.
Did not do it. No, I didn't. Nope, did not do it.
Man, it's so unserious.
Unserious is a good word for OJ.
Listen, I I just would be a liar if I pretended I care, like whether he's guilty. Like, it's just not something, again, the kind of defense attorney I am. It's like one of those things where people be like, oh, how can you represent this person if they did? It's not something I stress myself out trying to figure out, because I've been wrong before in real life with clients I know. Like, I represented a white woman once that gave me a whole story, like a long story about this man being an abuser and blah, 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 da, 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 da. And like the next morning, I was woken up like top of the morning to her trying to destroy footage she ain't told me exists. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, you really don't be knowing. Like, that's the thing, right? It's like the world can vary. How many times has the world been adamantly sure of something, and then they watch a documentary or a docuseries tell them something different, and they're like, oh shit, we all got it wrong. Then another docuseries comes out, oh shit, we all got it right. Like, you don't actually know.
True.
I don't personally know. I think, to me, I like to look at cases in terms of what the implications are for the rest of us. And in the case of OJ, there are actually a lot of ways in which the system fucked him in a way that they fuck Black people every day, even though, because Pete, the problem is people like to stop the analysis of what OJ's criminal stuff at that case. They need to talk about the second case and everything that was done and what that means for how Black people are taxed in the legal system every day. That's how I feel about that one.
That's fair. I'm gonna say one more thing. If I do ever beat a case, especially if I did it, but even if I didn't do it, I ain't writing no books about it. I ain't making no pranks about it. I'm not walking up to no white reporters' doors going, like, I ain't doing none of that shit, because I know they want revenge. It's almost like I always wondered if there was a part of him that felt guilty for getting away with it, and he almost needed to like.
I don't think so. I think him not expecting that. Him not anticipating retaliation, to me, is a reflection of the original problem with him, is how divorced he was from his own Blackness. Like, his own. He forgot the reality of what it is to be a Black man. No matter how much you think you class out of Blackness, you don't.
Yeah. And OJ don't do nothing but mess with white women. He don't do nothing but hang with white people. He thought that could shield him from a very, very Black reality, and it just didn't. All right, y'all. Yes, it is time for the Diddy updates. For the last few weeks, the world has been once again focused on Diddy because of the raid of his homes, because of the charges against his son Christian, because of more people coming forward, because last month or so, Lil Rod came forward with his case. When you look at the Diddy case as a lawyer, what do you see?
So I'm going to have a slightly different perspective than I think everybody's been sharing on this. And if anybody watched when I first came on Marc's channel to talk about Diddy, and I did on High Learning too, I talked about, obviously, with the Cassie lawsuit, which is civil, not criminal. My feelings and perspectives get different depending on if we're talking about civil or criminal court. And I think it's important that we as a community outside of the legal system recognize that we know what Diddy is, we know what Diddy's been, and how we talk about that and address the actual problematic behavior, not just like homophobic rhetoric and sex shame and the women he's associated with and all that, like actually addressing that. But as far as the criminal case, again, I think this is one of those times where, again, a case is being sensationalized and people are so invested in how they feel about the person and all this different stuff that no one's actually talking about the legal implications. And I think it is concerning to me, the fact that there is nothing that we know. There is no reason. There is nothing that we know about this case, even at the most sensationalized version of what you're hearing. There is nothing that we know that would justify why the government is using military force to go show up to Diddy's house on not even an arrest warrant, not even to like make actual arrest, just to conduct this warrant or search else, and showing up.
Tell me about that, because I had the same opinion, right? I said, I don't see this happening to a white billionaire or a white celebrity of any sort. I've heard people say, well, he's potentially being investigated for trafficking, not just of people, but maybe of weapons. Maybe people think that. But I'm like, I don't imagine Diddy in an armed standoff. I don't think he's going to be standing with machine guns like Tony.
There is nothing to indicate that. And we as considering what it means to live in a police state and police force, and the way that police show up against Black people every day, and the fact that we know there's greater danger at just having police show up, we should be concerned about anything happening, or that there could be ever set a precedent that there could be so much media or sensationalism around a case that we look past the fact that they showed up, their homeland security, like arresting. Why are his kids being in beef? Like, and this is just purely, this is not because I think Diddy is innocent or any of that. This is because there's no need for this and what it means for everybody. If they're showing up using military like force, a bunch of guns, this is at his like homes that his children are in the names of his children, are having his sons arrested or at least even being handcuffed, the appearance of that detained. Like all those things are intentionally things that are done to put pressure on somebody, to dehumanize them, also to make them fear for their lives. Anything that can happen, those are dangerous things. Somebody said,
let me ask you, is it illegal? Like, is it one of those things where he could sue, or is it just like something that they could do?
I think he could civilly, like, you know, it depends on, again, whether or not you should do something right now in the position that you're in, and all these different things has a lot to do with it. But just in terms of factually, like whether or not he could pursue like excessive force and stuff like that, yeah, for sure. So civilly, like, yeah, that was excessive. So I think that's something that we should be paying attention to. And just in general, this case, there was one of the complaints. It was one of these civil suits that Diddy has been received. You know, he's been getting sued a lot. And one of the civil suits, the one that like was really viral because they had pictures in the exhibits and stuff like that, that is some of the worst lawyering, most inflammatory silliness I've ever seen, and like with errors throughout, and it really showed. What's unfortunate is, again, because people are not willing to talk, they want to gossip about it, so they're not willing to like think about why that's happening. There's no need for these photos in the exhibit. It's in order to shame people and do what it did, like have people talking about Meek Mill and all these different people by shaming them and associating them with things that even, I think it's interesting that people, Cassie's lawsuit, where that was immediately settled, and you have every reason to believe that she's telling the truth, that different people came out and verified it for people. There were people not willing to believe that, yet they want to believe a complaint that has multiple people already come out and debunk different parts of it and stuff, just because they rather make fun of different celebrities as being gay or Diddy sexuality, and so they're not interested. And but that was awful Mickey Mouse lawyering that happened in that one.
I was baffled by this. I was looking. This is the case. First of all, it looked like a high school project. Like, yes. I ain't no lawyer, but I mean, the way the photos was pasted in the people.
Yeah, like that is not a thing. That's not necessary. This is somebody intentionally trying to weaponize the media against a celebrity. And that's happening a lot. The same thing kind of happened with Lizzo's lawsuit, but people are not interested in hearing that. They're not recognizing that these are attorneys like and again, I'm not pro Diddy. Remind you, go back and watch what I had to say about Diddy and Cassie. I'm not pro Diddy. This is just, honestly, this is fake. Like, this is just what's really happening. These are lawyers knowing that these celebrities are going to be subject to media discourse and pressure and like that, and they are intentionally, like, what would enticing anybody into homosexuality and all these different things, and the guy, the video, the screenshots they put up saying it was Stevie J, the actual guy already came up and said who it is. It was not Stevie J. All of these things are intentionally just to play on what is all this about homosexuality. What is a civil suit for that? That's just intentionally playing on how the public will discuss it.
Break this down for me, because I was trying to figure out the intention from a lawyer's perspective, or maybe even from just a plaintiff's perspective. Like, for example, it says Mr. Combs informed Mr. Jones that he had engaged in sexual intercourse with rapper 5, footnote 5, redacted, R&B singer 6, redacted, and Stevie J. When you go to rapper 5, it says he is a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, intentionally. This is not a real, like, this is.
Do they do that in lawsuits?
No, this is buffoonery. Like, this is, that's what I'm saying to you. Like, this is absolute foolishness. And the fact that wasn't the height of the discussion is what I'm saying. It's like people want, because they enjoy this, they want these things to be true. They are overlooking the obvious cartoonish nature of the allegations. And you know what's crazy? This is on purpose. Like I said, there are a lot of attorneys that try to use the media to their advantage in terms of cases and what they manipulate and pressure. And a lot of them, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we're seeing this happen a lot, because that, like, this is like the Lizzo's, the lawsuits or whatever with Lizzo is very like intentionally crafted in order to like force their hand and threaten them based on like media public perception. But lawyers are losing cases based on how they do media things. Like Jonathan Major's attorneys lost him the case in terms of how they played that in the media. I've never seen a greater fumble, and it's never being talked about like that. But if there was one person who needed to sue their fucking lawyers for ruining their career, it's Jonathan Majors. Like, wow. Yes, they ruined him. It upsets my spirit as an attorney.
When you see people come forward with cases like the one you just see from Lil Rod, which is filled with, like you said, buffoonery, innuendo, gossip, just random drive-bys on people, rhetorically speaking, Is the goal here to shame Diddy and to get him to settle? Is the idea I'm going to make this document so that you don't want it to come out? Kind of like what ended up happening with Cassie.
Yeah, it's to shame you. I'm sure what they did was threaten to put out all that kind of foolishness and stuff about him, or in order to pressure him to settle, and he didn't. So they put that out and to create this whole frenzy around him.
That makes complete sense to me,
Yeah.
and it seems to be working. But the piece that we didn't cover is the criminal side of that raid. I get the idea that it was excessive force. I get the idea that this is somewhat unprecedented for people of Diddy's ilk, and not to say Diddy should get special treatment as a rich person. I'm saying nobody should get the door kicked in and their kids handcuffed under these circumstances.
Yeah.
But the feds don't usually be on your ass unless they're on your ass. Like usually when the feds.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Once the feds want you, the feds got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No. They come in for him. I'm not saying. Oh, I'm not. Oh yeah. No. They're gonna get him. They're gonna get him.
Okay.
But they could do it better.
Based on what you're hearing, based on what you're seeing, what do you think is the most likely charges he's going to see?
Honestly, it's hard. I couldn't say, because to be honest, there's too much speculation and people throwing out a bunch of shit around it. You know what I mean? There's just no way to know. There's too many different stories and speculation. People assuming the worst. I'm not hearing enough factually to say what the charges are going to be. But I do know. Usually when the feds let us know that they're thinking about somebody, they've been thinking about it. They got the shit already. They already got it. They just, it's a spectacle, but they're gonna get you.
Wow. All right, I got one final question for you. I watched you on The Breakfast Club. You debated Eric Adams, the mayor. How did you end up debating Eric Adams on The Breakfast Club?
So what happened was Charlamagne and Lamont had Candace Owens on The Breakfast Club, and I criticized them for that, like publicly. I posted a video. I was like, they absolutely unacceptable. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. So Charlamagne called me up in the middle of dinner, like, "What's up, Queen? let me have it." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, let me tell you what's wrong with that for the next 45 minutes, right?"
Yeah,
so I did, and we have a philosophical disagreement on the matter.
Respect.
But, yeah, and he was like, "Okay, come on the Breakfast Club next week." So around Tuesday, I texted him and be like, "Oh, that's still happening this week," and he was like, "Yeah, we're trying to have you in on Thursday with the mayor." I was like, "The mayor who? Eric Adams?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me tell you right now, ain't no fucking way they let that happen." I'd have
bet my last dollar he wouldn't have did that.
I was sure of it. I was confident that that's not happening. Like, I was prepared for it because my mom had already convinced me. My mom didn't want me to do it and was like prophetizing negativity over my life. So I had anxiety for the full day before, because my mother was like, "Oh God, Olayemi, please no, don't do that. That's a setup, Olayemi. They did, that's a setup. Don't do that."
Right. That's what I would have thought too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was sure it wasn't gonna come, and I was there at the studio first. I was there around like 9:30, and he was not there. He didn't get there till 10:15. So I was like, "He's not here." I was like, "Yeah, that's not happening." And then they were like, and they also didn't tell me I would be doing the interview. I didn't know that until I was outside of the room. So they're like, "Oh, you're gonna be doing it, and he'll be here at 10:15." And I'm still like, "Yeah, ain't no way."
Wild. So at this point, you still thought that somebody would be moderating and they'd ask you a question, ask him a question.
Yes,
like that.
That's what I thought was gonna be happening.
Right.
So
okay.
so they told me, and then I'm in the room. He walks in, Charlamagne, and them were like, have the cameras already on. Have them pointed towards the door. Have the cameras already rolling. And he gets there, and I was as surprised as y'all. And then even after the interview, an interview going, I was like, they're gonna edit this footage. They're gonna bury this footage. It's not coming out. Sometimes I was like, let me post the picture now on social support. You gotta put it out. you have to put it out. So I was like, oh, especially then when the picture came out and people were assuming that means because I was smiling in the photo that I was kikiing with him.
I was
like, Lord, please don't let. I was like, everything but that happened, but please don't let these people edit this footage to make it look like I was being nice to this man, because they're gonna call me everything but a child of God.
And then when you got in the interview with him, you kept hitting him with facts. You were like, you said this, you did this, you said this. And what was struck me was how many times he denied saying something that he literally said word for word.
Yes, yes. I love when he says he didn't call. I was like, you were the one naming the Latino and African migrants, and he's like, I didn't do that. Moments later, Venezuela, Honduras.
Right. Wow.
I love it.
So after you dog walk the mayor of New York, at the end of the interview, does he say goodbye? Does he smile? Does he hug? Does he cuss you out?
Yeah, so Charlemagne was like, "Oh, Mayor, you should get her number." Charlemagne was like very doing the y'all should work together, you know. So Charlemagne's like, "Oh, you
He's
should
a
get it."
connector. Yeah.
Yeah, so he gives me all his numbers, and then he texts me later, and he said, "Oh, it was nice meeting you today," and I said, "It was nice meeting you too, Mayor." And he said, "What is your name?" He said, "What does your name mean?" And I told him, I said, "My name means affluence befits me," and he responded with a prayer hand emoji that he did not change to the color of a Black person. He said. And I think that is telling.
He hit you with the white prayer hands.
Yes.
Yeah, you Presbyterian prayer hands. Wow. So that's it, man. You now go down legendary status, but I don't know if you got a car, but you better pay your parking tickets on time.
Let me tell you something. Listen, the way NYPD is on my fucking back, Mark. Like just harassing at the main Twitter accounts. Like I can't even hide it. My mother lives in constant fear that I'm gonna be in America, putting myself in danger doing this work. And I really like dismiss her and blah blah blah. But now she's seeing like, cause her algorithm on YouTube is set to her child. So anytime she's seeing everyone else's coverage about it, so she found out about NYPD tweeting about me, and she calls me like hysterical, like whatever. She sends me like a prayer from her friend. I'm like, oh my God. And my boyfriend had the nerve to be like, oh, I mean, like this was the vigil of the 19-year-old Win Rosario, who was killed by NYPD that I brought up in the interview. My boyfriend wanted to go to the vigil, and I was like, baby, look on Twitter right now. Like, NYPD goes to those things for the express purpose of fucking with people in the rest of them in general. You want me, public enemy number one, to go right now? We're locked up. We're getting locked up.
Right, you're going to jail.
I was like, stay in this fucking house, close the curtains, don't walk nowhere at night with me, and stop posting that I'm your girlfriend. These people are gonna come for you. That we get just anxiety is high. I was like, oh my God, these people are on my head.
Yo, but it's worth it, yo. You inspire a whole bunch of people. I watch so many people, even in night school audience right now, the night school classroom, they hear like, yo, that interview inspired me. I took notes. I learned how to move. I learned how to confront the powerful. Like, I hope you appreciate just how important that interview was, but just how important you are to us, yo. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight on Night School. I know it's late. Even though you're young, you should be,
I'm an old, tired body gal, Mark. I was on the couch layout like, oh, Mark always does everything I ask him to do. I have to come.
Well, I appreciate it. Y'all tell everybody where they can find you.
Y'all can all find me on all my social medias at Miss Olurin, MSOLURIN, and on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel, Olurinati. We drop new episodes of Olay and Friends every Sunday at 1 o'clock. It's going to be great. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
See you. Peace. All right, everybody. That was Olayemi Olurin. She is one of the dopest lawyers, one of the dopest movement lawyers, one of the dopest New York lawyers. We love her. She's fam to the show. I'm gonna make sure all of you hit the like button. Let them YouTube algorithms know that you're rocking with me. Also hit the subscribe button. When you hit the subscribe button, you become part of what we do on a regular basis. Hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. Get the notifications. That way, whenever we put out content, you can be right there with it. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit that join button. Become a monthly member of the channel. That allows you to give us the support we need to sustain this channel, but also to grow the channel. You become a member of the MLH official family.